Hey, did you know Long's Products is a family-owned janitorial supply with mops, brooms, trash bags, and they even have food service disposables, carry-out plates, and to-goes? Check us out.
Good morning, Sin-Law. I'm Jack, and you're watching a special edition of the Let's Talk show right here on UrbanCast, where we don't make the news, we just tell it. Joining us today is Robert Rigdon, President and CEO of SunGas Renewables, the company behind the $2 billion green methanol plant facility planned for Central Louisiana at the old IP location. This project could mean over 1,100 construction jobs and more than 100 permanent jobs and long-term partnerships in sustainable energy. But with growth comes questions, particularly about the carbon disposal through underground sequestration. This is your chance to hear directly from the leadership over at SunGas. As always, you're more than welcome to submit your comments and your questions. Like this stream, share it, and it is so that your neighbors and everyone can stay informed. That being said, Mr. Rigdon, how are you doing this morning?
Hi, I'm doing well, Jack, and thank you for having me on to your show.
Oh, absolutely. Tell us a little bit, if you could, if we jump right into it, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and SunGas, and the project as a whole here in Central Louisiana, Mr. Rigdon?
Okay, well, just a little bit about myself then. I'll start there. I am a mechanical engineer by training. I grew up in the Beaumont Port Arthur area in a couple of little towns called Port Neches and Grove, so actually not that far from Louisiana. Mm-hmm. Graduated from Lamar University there many years ago, Jack. Mm-hmm. And over the years, I've had a career with Texaco and Chevron and General Electric and other companies before joining SunGas in 2020. Mm-hmm. I've spent a lot of my time over the years with technologies similar to what we're using at SunGas, and that's given me some unique experience in how to build these projects well and so forth. So that's a little bit about my background. The SunGas company was spun out of the Institute, the Gas Technology Institute in Chicago, now known as GTI Energy. What's interesting about that is GTI Energy is a not-for-profit research and development institute that's been in the U.S. for over 80 years. It's kind of quite well known for developing a lot of fundamental technologies related largely to the gas industry over all those years. And our technology that we have at SunGas was developed there dating all the way back into the 1970s. And then our technology is, that development continued across all the decades, and a number of applications of our technology were built in different parts of the world, are mainly on coal, using coal to make syngas, to make chemicals and things such as that, like methanol. And then as the years went by and we got into the later decades, particularly the latter part, closer to 2018 and 2019, and the need for renewable energy became much more in focus, the technology became much more important because it's one of the few technologies in the world that can convert biomass materials such as wood fiber, reliably do that at large scale, and do that to make biofuels. So the gas technology, long story short, gas technology decided to spin SunGas out and bring in a professional team, and did that in 2020. In September 2020, I joined SunGas actually as the first employee. Mm-hmm. And then we brought in some professionals from the Institute, and Gas Technology Institute's funded most of our, that along with our business activities has funded most of our business to date. I guess one other noteworthy thing about SunGas is as we've grown, then we have brought in outside investment because projects like the one we're doing there near Pineville, the Beaver Lake project, as you mentioned, they're large capital projects, and we need a lot of outside investment to be able to build these projects. So we've formed strategic partnerships with a London-based company called C2X, which is a company that is focused on the development and deployment of projects such as the one we're doing here, and they help us a lot with the heavy investment that we need now. So that's a little bit of background on SunGas.
Okay, and so why did we have a big country here. Why was Central Louisiana selected for this particular project?
Well, we did a really thorough site selection process, and mostly focused in the U.S. Southern Wood Basket. What that means is states like, well, East Texas and Arkansas, Mississippi, Alabama, all the way over into Georgia. And we went around and we looked at a lot of different sites. And there's actually, there's a number of nice sites around the U.S. Central Louisiana became the most attractive site for us for a number of reasons. I think one is the fact that there was a community there that had been involved with operating a very large paper mill. And what was important about the paper mill is that when we're looking to build this project and we are trying to explain how we're making the biofuels, it's very helpful for us to say that we're building on a site where there was an operation in the past, like a paper mill. And in that operation was using wood fiber, just like what we're going to use to make, where they were making paper, we'll make biofuels. And so it shows that there's a track record in your community of being able to work with the forest, manage the forest, reliably deliver the feedstock to the plant. It's been done for decades there, and you're really good at it. And so that was one of the really attractive features. And I guess the other thing gets more down into the nuts and bolts of the project, such as, well, that IP site, because it was such a big and important site, it has a lot of still infrastructure there that's important to us. It has the connectivity to rail, it has high voltage power lines and things like that. It has water wells and so forth. So when you put all this together, well, and then there was one more thing. When we started to engage with the local community, we really had a very warm reception. About the project. We're encouraged to really strongly consider Central Louisiana, and when you put all that together, it really made this site become our preferred site for this project.
A lot of the literature and some of the things that people have been talking about is, we're going to get about 1,100 construction jobs and about 100 permanent jobs at the site. Can you kind of break that down for us? How many actual permanent jobs will be created at the facility, and approximately what would their incomes be out there?
Okay, well, so what we have running in our models now is that there's 104. Give or take direct jobs. That's the 100 that you're hearing, just rounded to even 100. And those jobs are going to be largely people involved in the operations and the maintenance of the unit. There will be technical staff on site there to deal with technical services and technical questions that have to be answered in the course of that. There are a lot of logistics that go on with bringing in feedstocks and moving product out. So there's will be professional jobs associated with logistics. There's a lot of procurement that goes on in a big facility like this, just procuring everything from not only feedstocks like the wood chips or other, but things like procuring parts and procuring services. And so it's quite a extensive professional organization. And well, the pay will vary quite a bit, but primarily these will all fall in the category of what I would say high-paying jobs, because these are all have a fair amount of skill level involved, and they're also jobs that largely are trainable, so that we can work with, and we are already entering some discussions with some of the local community colleges and so forth to look at how we can help, work with training programs to help train as many local applicants as we can to take these positions, Jack. So that hopefully gives you a profile of the positions that'll be there on the direct hire side.
Okay. For the local workers, will there be? You did talk about, kind of answered that question a little bit for me, but training opportunity partnerships with the area community colleges and what have you. Is it any particular training programs that you guys are looking at these guys need? Welding, some of the more advanced manufacturing concepts that are in the manufacturing environment now, or what types of?
Yeah, good question. So, and when we look at how we service and maintain the unit, we will have welders on site for sure.
Mm-hmm.
We will have millwrights or mechanics, I guess, depending on what you want to call that particular trade on site to do that work. We will have people that are trained in instrumentation and controls, because there's a lot of instrumentation, that goes into these types of projects. And then there are really advanced computer systems, that are used to control and monitor these industrial projects. So you can imagine that we've got people there that they keep up with all of that as well. And that's sort of on the maintenance side. I mean, and there's always sort of the other side of maintenance when we do, like from time to time, we will take the unit down to do what we would call large turnarounds. That will happen periodically. And then we would bring in a lot of external support too, as well as our internal support, all kinds of crafts to do turnarounds and clean things and put it all back together and start it up again. So that's sort of on the craft side. And then on the operations side, there are going to be operating positions there that are going to be running control rooms. So they'll be sitting in front of largely computer screens like we are right now, looking at all the controls, and they'll be trained in how to do that. And those are great jobs there, and fully jobs that we can train people to do. And then there'll be operations jobs that are out in the field that are walking through the units, checking everything, making sure everything's going well and correctly.
Okay. Another question that's come up fairly often. People talk about it being a $2 billion project, and you kind of mentioned it a little bit about the sources of the funds and things. You hear this question quite often. Would this project or facility be economically feasible without the federal and state level tax incentives? Is this something that SunGas could completely do on its own, or is it going to depend on the federal government, state government, local government?
Yeah, I've heard this question before. Well, there was two dimensions, I guess, to your question. One was state level, and one was federal level. The federal level tax incentives are primarily focused on the incentive to what we call the 45Q incentive to support carbon capture sequestration. And that incentive is fundamentally important to our project. It really is. And in fact, it's not our project alone, Jack. All these projects that are, and many of them that are planned in the United States right now, and particularly I would say along the Gulf Coast and in Louisiana, are dependent on that 45Q tax incentive. And that's a tax incentive that helps initiate the industry so that we can take advantage of being able to have carbon capture sequestration such that we have cleaner burning fuels and so forth. But over time, that incentive fades out.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not a forever thing. Mm-hmm. It's a thing that the government's been doing. Also, it's been doing for many years. So this is not particularly new. This has been going on for probably at least 15 years, maybe more, on these 45Q, and it's helped build up, which is already out there, a growing carbon capture sequestration industry that's growing now in different parts of the country and along the U.S. Gulf Coast. So it is required, and without that, the financial attributes of the project are not strong enough, generally speaking, to be able to go forward.
Okay, all right. Now, if you could, before I go into this next block of questions, I'm talking to an engineer now. Could you, just in a high level, from a high level standpoint, I do realize that SunGas is your portion is to take these wood products and turn it into methane, methanol, and there's a byproduct, and you got to get rid of it. Can you go over that process? And then there's another company that's going to carry those waste products away, and they're going to do something with those waste products. Can you just explain that process for us, if you don't mind?
I will, and I'll try not to get too down in the weeds, but I'll go a little bit into the weeds here, okay? Because you may have some listeners here that are really interested in that. But
I think we got some questions.
Yeah, you probably have some questions on it. But what happens is we start with a wood chip, which is the same type of feedstock that it was used at the paper mill. So you can imagine that, and it's something that's hauled around your local area a lot. It's a very common wood fiber product in the forestry industry. So we start with that, and that goes through a gasification process, and that's particularly the technology that SunGas is bringing to the table here, and it's the foundational technology that converts that wood chip into synthesis gas. And synthesis gas is a mixture of carbon monoxide, hydrogen, and carbon dioxide, and some small trace elements like a little bit of sulfur in wood, but very little. So that syngas moves downstream, and we take that little bit of sulfur out of the syngas, and then as it moves on downstream, we go through a process that changes the hydrogen to carbon ratio, and this is getting a little bit technical here, but what that process does is it allows us to bring more, a balance of hydrogen and carbon to go to the process of making methanol, and that process liberates a fair amount of CO2. Mm-hmm. Right in the middle of our stream of going from the wood fiber to the methanol, sort of right in the middle of that roadmap to get from wood fiber to methanol, we have a byproduct of CO2 that comes out there. Well, and then the syngas, I'll come back to the CO2, but then the syngas goes on downstream, and it goes into a conventional methanol unit, which takes the syngas with a catalyst and converts that, which is now CO and hydrogen, and it converts that CO and hydrogen into a methanol molecule, which is, and then methanol, I think a lot of people are pretty familiar with methanol in some regards. We call it a commodity chemical. It's also a fuel that's been used in drag racing for many years, and things like that. But it's a very, very clean burning liquid fuel that will then be put in tanks. And then those tanks, when we have enough in the tank, then that'll go down to the port, and it'll be loaded into barges, and then that will move out the river, go into the Mississippi, and then it'll go on down, and then it'll be distributed from the sort of a area down south part of the Mississippi on out to the customers from there. So that's how the methanol gets out. Mm-hmm. And then it will come back to the CO2. So the CO2 now, we require the CO2 to be permanently sequestered and stored. And when I say we require that, let me say that our customers that are buying the methanol require that. and we can't sell the methanol if we're not sequestering and storing that CO2. And I can answer more about why that is, but we look for service providers that are experts in taking CO2 and safely storing it, and that's what we do. So we would be sending the CO2 to a service provider, and in this case, I think we all know, because it's been mentioned several times, that we're working with CPS, Capture Point, to be able to take the CO2 from this project, and they will permanently store it. That's their business, and we pay them to do that. Now, we pay a lot of money for them to do that, frankly. Mm-hmm. But the other thing I would say, because there's so much focus on this CO2, is that the CO2 storage and piping has been going on for a long time, decades, around the U.S. Gulf Coast. There is an extensive network of CO2 pipelines in the Gulf Coast now. Most of the CO2's been, at least in the earlier decades, has been used to help oil production. So it's gone in, but it's basically stored underground once it goes in for oil production, largely. And then nowadays, the CO2 is also, particularly from the newer projects that are under consideration, as being stored not related to oil production, not anywhere close to oil production facilities, generally in areas where the geology is very, very amenable for permanent storage. And so the CO2 goes underground deeply, gets into the rock, and I want to imagine it's not like there's a big void or cavern underground that the CO2 is being put in. You imagine something closer to a sponge, and the rock is porous, and the CO2 is going out into the porous rock. And then over time, the CO2 interacts with the rock and turns into different forms of carbonates, and really turns right back into rock over time. And so the CO2 is converted to a solid material, and then over time, it wouldn't be able to escape. In the meantime, this is a very mature industry, both in the piping of the CO2 and the storage of the CO2. All of these technologies to safely handle that have been working for a long time, and how we monitor this and how we check to make sure everything's working properly. So now that's all on the side of the CO2 service provider. That's not really our expertise. What we know how to do at SunGas is we know how to take the wood chip, and we know how to do a really good job of making methanol out of it. And that's what our focus is on.
I guess then the other question would be if the companies require it be stored, and I would imagine underground is being permanently stored. Mm-hmm. Are there any other alternatives to storing it beneath the ground in the community? Is it are there any other forms of storage of this carbon?
That is a very big question that we are constantly, as an industry, as a global focus on CO2, is constantly looking for ways to better and better utilize the CO2 and different ways of storing. So carbon capture sequestration for quite a while now has been identified as one of the largest potential sources for safely storing CO2. And as we look out into the future, technologies will emerge that can utilize that CO2 more effectively. A lot of those emerging technologies are not mature yet. The carbon capture sequestration is a large, safe, has been identified through studies that have been done over and over, not just by industry, but by the U.S. government as well, and Department of Energy. It's one reason why the incentives exist. So this has been deeply, deeply studied. So for us today, at scale like this, there really aren't. Now, because, CO2 is used in things like food production and soda pop and things that we drink, but honestly, when you do that, Jack, it's not stored. It's still basically going out. Okay. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And the CO2 piece is, more on that other companies. Let me ask this question as well. Your customers are requiring that it be permanently stored. If for whatever reason we can't come up with a solution to permanently store the product, then what happens?
Well, okay. So let's say the scenario is we can't get comfortable with CCS, although just want to reiterate, we've been comfortable with it for decades now, okay? But let's say to answer your question directly, what will happen is projects like ours won't get built here. They will get built in China, primarily. China is looking at building renewable methanol projects rapidly and competing in the global marketplace. So one of the things that is really attractive about our project is that, and about Louisiana and Central Louisiana, is that it allows us to really participate in bringing manufacturing jobs back to the U.S. We have nationwide goals that have been set out to strengthen our forestry industry, which has been suffering for a number of reasons, but one of the biggest is because of the closure of paper mills. And I think in your area, I think we've even had one recently close, and not too far away, probably from where you are. Well, and this is not like a one-off. This has been going on for a number of years, and it's going to continue because we're all using devices more and not paper. And so the revitalization of the forestry industry really needs the ability to have industries that can take this wood chip and convert it into something useful, where it was before paper, and we can make it into biofuels. But and bring these manufacturing jobs here instead of letting them go overseas the way they are, because that's where it'll go if we don't build a project like this. And the last thing I would say is the CCS industry is the SunGas specific project is a relatively modest amount of CO2. It's a large CO2 for our project and the way we look at it, but in the overall scheme of CO2 being stored in this country every year, it's relatively modest. If we don't go forward with this project, it's not going to impact the CCS industry. We are not creating the CCS industry. We're not creating the Sinla hub that's been discussed so much. We are not the foundation of that hub's development. There's many customers that will be putting CO2 there. We're just one of them that would come online a few years from now, not even soon. So if we don't go forward with our project, then that'll be a real shame, in my opinion, for the whole area and for the opportunity for the country to really meet a lot of its goals on manufacturing and biofuels production and exporting of energy and competition against China and rebuilding the forestry industry, and the big role that Pineville can play in that on something that's a fairly high technology platform, sort of bringing the sort of technology focus to Central Louisiana as well. This is not an old school sort of just industrial project. This has elements of new technology, which is really, I think, good for the local area. So that's my view of how that would all play out, Jack.
Let me change the direction a little bit here. A lot of people are concerned about the safety of the whole carbon capture sequestration process. And there are situations where the industry didn't either maintain the equipment or something happened and there were explosions. And different things of that nature. So how, what parameters? I know you guys don't, y'all won't be putting the stuff into the ground, but since you're going to be a big customer of theirs, what requirements are you guys putting in place to make sure that the safeguards that the community have you know, they have huge concerns about.
Okay. Well, that's a good question, and safety is always a really important question with any industrial project. And so I'm going to touch safety as a general concept because we're building a facility based on gasification technology that's going to methanol, and there's so many areas of the design of this plant where we have to have safety in mind. I mean, safety from just the production of the wood chip, which is a very physical process, to when we get into where we have the chemistry going on inside of the production of the wood chip to the methanol and methanol safety. Fortunately, this is a very well-established production of methanol that we have very, very mature safety protocols in the engineering and the design of these facilities that we deploy. Mm-hmm. As an industry in the United States, we have one of the best, if not the best, safety record in industry. And it's not, it's like everything in life. Things happen and it's not perfect, but we are one of the best in the world here in the U.S. at safety records in industry, and we continue and will deploy that type of thinking in all of our designs that we do. The CO2 side, from an engineering point of view, is actually more straightforward. From us, CO2 doesn't combust, it doesn't explode. It is a process of compressing it and a pipeline and then storing it. So it's while there's a number of safety concerns that have to be put in place, safety monitoring, safety related equipment, these are all well established and known. From a SunGas point of view, when we look at your specific question around CO2, we have only chosen to work with CCS providers, or we only would as we go forward in the future, that know how to do this, that have a track record of doing this and know what they're doing, and all of the large ones do. And so that will be our focus. But it's not just safety of CO2, it's safety all around the whole project. We'll have all kinds of monitoring around the project and inside the project, and that's not unique. And if you go and look at all of these different chemical facilities down on the Gulf Coast and south of I-10 there, it's going to be a lot of that same heavy monitoring that'll be going on, and that'll make sure and ensure that this is a safe operation for decades.
Just one observation that I've been making based upon the concerns, and I do see the separation of SunGas and your partner there, but one of the biggest concerns is the safety of the disposal of the carbon capture. And another big one is the coming from a very conservative area of the country, is the tax incentives for companies. Mm-hmm. And I do get what you're talking about, but safety, if I'm looking at the question, the comments that have been coming in since we've been talking, they're definitely along the concerns of safety, air quality and different things of that nature. And it, out in South Rapides is where the city of Alexandria gets its water, from the wells in that area.
Yeah.
And what you're beginning to hear is tons of questions, along that line. Will our water, quality get impacted because of of not your operation, but because of the disposal of the CO2?
Well, I think, Jack, if you don't mind me stepping in here, I think that we also have to help answer that question about those things. One of the things that we're going to do, and I didn't mention it earlier, is, and maybe it's not even clear to everybody, we recently made an important decision around late April or May, where we entered into this final phase of development on the Beaver Lake project. And so in doing that, part of our plan, and we're sort of launching it out here now, is to be much more engaged with the community. Mm-hmm. So we will be, and it won't just be us. We're going to be having groups that we're going to form, and we're actually looking right now at finding a local office there so we can have a local presence. And we'll be bringing in helping to bring in experts in the industry, because I wouldn't say SunGas is the leading expert to explain CCS and CO2 geology. I mean, we can do that, but there's other parties and people and individuals that have been doing this their whole career. And I would encourage all of us that are really interested in getting information out into the public to also get these professionals out and and you may want to interview some of these and folks. And these are not just companies either. Some of these are individuals themselves that have been working in the industry that you can tap into that may have been retired, so they're not affiliated with companies anymore, and can give you a very sort of an independent, I think, view on the safety of CO2. And we'll be doing a lot of that as well to help educate the public on things like your question around groundwater. And I can, try to answer that question. And I know the basic answer to the question, but I think it's best to come from one of those industry people that have been doing this for years that can explain why that is not of a concern for us, particularly in the geology that you have in Central Louisiana.
One last question before we get ready to get out of here. There's a broader question that people are asking, and in this case, it's the whole industry as a whole, and it's the cap on industrial errors or long-term impact. Do you believe it's appropriate for companies to operate under a liability cap, or should companies bear full responsibility for harm that they may cause, with industrial errors and different things of that nature? What's your thoughts on that?
Liability? Well, that's an interesting question, and I haven't really thought about it posed that way. I think I would answer it this way. In an industrial facility like ours, and when you're operating, you want zero incidents, zero. And if there's incidents, and we don't have any financial cap on us. If we have to, there's nobody says this is all you have to do, and then you're off the hook. First off, zero incidents is, and then secondly is, if there were one, we have to fix it. We have to fix it, and then the consequences of the incident are borne by the facility and the companies. So it's always like that, and it's and mainly for the reason that we want everybody that comes to work every day to go home as good or better than they came to work. But we also, in the very rare times that something happens, the companies are always the ones that are responsible for getting things taken care of and fixed and properly remedied.
Well, I think we all like clean burning fuel. I think we all like the idea that we can take the forestry products that we produce here in Louisiana in abundance.
Yes.
And do something with them. I think we're, from a media standpoint and from an observation, just trying to give an honest assessment, people are really concerned about how we're going to dispose and what are the health risks associated with CO2. I think it appeared to be the thing that's really getting the buzzword here. And so, any industry experts that we can talk to and ask the tough questions, we don't mind having that conversation with them. Especially if it helps the community understand what's actually taking place.
It's good. Well, and we're going to do our part, Jack. We're going to be very actively doing, well, not just the CCS question, but there's many, many things about the project that we need to get out into the public domain now.
Well, Mr. Rigdon, before you get out of here, Robert, do you have anything you'd like to say to our listening audience?
Sure. I guess in my parting questions is, and I'm going to reiterate sort of some of what I've been saying along the way. We want to really work hard and earn the trust of the local community here with our project, and we're willing to do that. We are going to put a lot of effort here, as has always been planned. Now that we've made the decision to enter the final stage of development of this really important project, we intend to be in the public and provide information for the public, and we're going to do all the hard work we need to do to answer your questions and earn your trust, and that's where I guess I would leave it today, Jack, with you.
Robert, I definitely want to thank you for joining us and helping our community better understand the potential, the processes, and the concerns around this major project here in Central Louisiana. To our viewers, if this conversation brought clarity or raised more questions, leave your thoughts in the comments, likes, and shares. These are conversations that really matter to our community. UrbanCast definitely appreciate you taking the time. I'm pretty sure you're pretty busy. I definitely also want to say thank you to our loyal viewers and sponsors: Sadler's Towing, Long's Products, Legendary Kung Fu and Tai Chi, and our class of 2025 sponsors, Attorney Tiffany Sanders, Sadler's Towing, and District Attorney Philip Terrell. We definitely want to say thank you. This is Jack, and we are on Let's Talk, and we'll see you the next time. Mr. Rigdon, Robert, if you just hang in there 1 second, I'm going to go ahead and end this stream.
Hey, did you know Long's Products is a family-owned janitorial supply with mops, brooms, trash bags, and they even have food service disposables, carry-out plates, and to-goes? Check us out.